Good morning, everyone. Give us just a minute or two to let everybody else join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Give us just another minute or two to allow everybody to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Deliverable-Based Information Technology Services, also known as DBITS, Customer Marketing Forum. We are glad to have you with us today. Before we get started, let's cover a couple housekeeping items. Just a reminder that you can change your audio by switching between computer and phone. We want to remind everybody that everybody is muted this morning, but if you have questions or if you have something to address with the group, please open your Q&A box and put your questions in there, and we'll take time to answer those as we go today. But before we get started, if you would, please raise your hands real quick and let us know that you can hear us pretty clearly this morning so we have a good audio connection. All right. Thank you for that. Also, we will be making a handout available after the webinar ends. The speakers today are going to be Stephanie, Director of Cooperative Procurements, Vanya, Procurement Lead, Julia, Procurement Lead, and Patricia, Hub Coordinator. The agenda today, we're going to go over the purpose, goals, current RFO scope, general information for next steps, discussions and questions, and then conference closing. Going to go ahead and pass it over to Vanya.
Good morning, everyone. So the purpose of a customer forum is to provide customers a platform to share with DIR their experience with active DBITS contracts and allow customers to provide input into the next generation of deliverable-based information technology services solicitation. Also, I like to give you guys a couple disclaimers. One, I do not speak English as my natural language, so I am from Brazil. So if I say anything that you don't understand, if my English gets a little confusing, you're welcome to ask questions. I do not get offended. I just want you to know that. I've been here a long time, but sometimes I do get things confused still. And the next thing is I like to thank every single customer on this call because it's very difficult for DIR to improve without your participation. And one of the things that we're very proud of this round is that we are asking a lot of questions of vendors and customers. We did a complete vendor forum and got their input. And now we're going to get you all's input today. And I'm looking forward to hear from you. This is my first time since I joined DIR to do the DBITS solicitation. Looking forward for all the learning and experience that this will bring in my career. Appreciate very much. Next slide. So let's talk about the marketing goals. Next slide. So the goals here is for us to inform new customers and current customers of the different ways DIR is going about getting opinion from our customers, right? We're going to provide information and we're going to get information. We're going to work on reducing costs because if we don't have to do a lot of addendums and waste a lot of time, we are reducing costs to you as well as DIR. We want to promote competition. So one of the goals of the new solicitation scope is to make sure we're reaching all the audiences out there and that the scope is not very restrictive to just a specific thing or a specific type of business. I really want to receive input from you guys, and we want to remove any barriers between the solicitation, the final contract, and how the customers interact with DIR processes and contracts. And we want to promote hub vendors networking. So if you uses these contracts and you know of hub vendors, or if hub vendors approaching you asking about it, you can always send them to the solicitation videos or send them to me and Julia or Stephanie. We'll help them. But we want you guys to help us get the hub vendors involved on this, because services is one of the hub's biggest expenses that the state does. And it's one of our biggest goals as well. And all of this information that we're collecting in the forum will provide us a better solicitation scope, which will provide us better solutions and better response from vendors. Next slide. So today we're going to do things like, this is not about your listening to me all day and maybe at the end having some questions. This is about an interactive event where I'm going to provide information, then I'm going to ask you questions, and I really want to hear what you think. So please participate. It's very important. So we're designed to engage. We want to share information. We want to hear from you. And we're going to use the Zoom communication feature. So if you want to talk, raise your hand. And if you just want to ask a question, go ahead and put it on the Q&A part of the system. We're going to record everything and we're going to take notes so that we can incorporate your request. And then I will post to the customers. I'll send it through the people attending the seminar, answers and information collected so that you know what we did to answer your concerns. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about the current scope. Next slide. This previous RFO went out with 10 different categories. So if you were looking for development, you would go into the vendors that you could select vendors that were awarded the application development category. If you were looking for procurement assistant, then you would go to the information technology procurement assistance contracts award. Not every vendor that responds to this RFO does everything that we need. So there will be category awarded to each vendor based on their response and what they're proposing, okay? However, a lot of people, vendors especially, found that 10 categories was too much. So next slide. During the process of that solicitation under Addendum 4, we combined these into only 4 categories to make things more. And one of the things that we did was enterprise resource planning is a category that by itself is not anything, because you're going to always do ERP for business, or you're going to do ERP for application development, or you're going to do it for assessment. So it seems like that is in different sections of all the categories. So now we put it together in a way where you can use that as part of a category, not itself, so that you can get the same vendor, which is another option. So we have application development support, technology upgrade, migration and transformation, and enterprise resource planning. IT assessment planning, independent verification and validation, market research, procurement advisory, and contract implementation services. So also we have business intelligence, data management, analytical automation, including data warehousing. And this also include reporting creations. Like if you are a customer that have an old system, got new people, and you need somebody to come and help you guys develop reporting, this is also included here. And then we have the project and program management, which is something that goes along with all the other 3. But you can use it and might not. Some might need it. Some people might need it. Some people have project management in-house, so they don't want one. But if you need it, it's available for you, okay? Next slide. So when I send this to you, you'll be able to understand each one of these categories. But what we got here is the scope that was written before. So to give the vendors the idea, do you do these things? And if you do, which ones are you going to do under this contract? So not all of them are going to do all of this, but some of them will. And if you're looking for an all encompasses award for application development, then you will see all these other types. Okay, next slide. So by a show of hand, can anybody tell me if you guys are familiar with the current DBITS categories? You've been using it, you understand it. Show of hands, please. Patricia?
Looks like we got 2 people.
Okay, so I think we're going to talk about these categories a little bit more. So another one is development. Under the development category, you can also do agile methodology. You can do cloud transformation, digital transformation. There is tons of things that can be done under this category. But make sure that the vendor you select to use does do what you want. Just because they get awarded application development doesn't mean that they can do all of these things. Keep that in mind. Okay, next slide. So the second one is business intelligence, which this one I believe can go around the AI world where you will help they will help you improve your data management and analytical options with different tools, different things that they can show you, or you get the tools and they'll do it, the automation. And also data warehouse, because we're getting into a world where all the data is pretty much electronic. I don't know how many people out there is printing anything. So this is very critical because you have to protect your data warehousing. You need to protect your cybersecurity. You need to do, and this is where all of those pieces fall together. Okay, next slide. So IT assessment and planning. All of these items, financial planning, market review, market engagements, transition, contract management assistant, all of these things can be piece of number 3. And it all depends what your project requires. So you need to start from the point of your own scope of work and what you need. And then you can select the categories you need and maybe get a vendor that has all of them, so you only have to deal with one. That's an option. Or you can also pick different vendors. It's up to you how you want your project to go depending on what it is. And the scope of work is very important when these vendors are proposing pricing for you. Your scope of work must be clear, must be concise, and you need to be careful as you're writing your scope of works or your SOWs, whatever you want to call it, that you are being realistic with your goals, your dates, and your accomplishment. Because when it comes to software, it comes to technology, things change so fast that you want to make sure there is change management into your scope and that you address what ifs, risk management. So if something happens, you need more time, you need other vendors, you need to regroup your scope. Those are the things that you can think about when you're doing planning. Okay, next slide. So this one is important because business case development and statewide impact analysis, what you need when you're trying to fund a large project. In all these pieces, all these analysis, risk assessment, stakeholder management, all of these things can be done by an outside person. They need to know government. Make sure that you're talking to somebody that actually know the government environment, because all of these are pieces that you might have to put together to justify your purchases. Next slide. So just for you to get an idea where we are with these categories as of today, you can see where there's more expenditure here. So obviously application development is our biggest seller, 159 million. in the past 3 years. We haven't completed 2025 fiscal year yet, so we don't have those final numbers yet. That is just up to now. So the next thing to know is that the reason project and program management is so low in expenses is because application development, business automation, and IT assessment all have a project management piece. So some of these expenses include project management. Is not just that by itself. And these are the ones that do that just by itself. They hire somebody to manage a program, startup program, or a project management for a project that's specific internally to the agency, not necessary as a purchasing whatsoever. Is more like you need a management to control certain things within your projects internally and externally. So that's why that is so low, but it's still a very important category. Next slide. So evaluation criteria is our next stop, and we're going to do some discussion with this one. Next slide. So right now, the current RFO has two sections: the evaluation, pass and fail. These are critical, and I would engage your help to help vendors that you are familiar with understand how important this is, because it's the law, and we cannot provide anybody any exceptions whatsoever on this piece of the evaluation. We can't do clarification. We can ask for them to do things back and forth. The Exhibit A is what it is what they commit the government to do. They have to sign that document. And if they don't, they get disqualified immediately. There is no ifs and buts, okay? The financial information, Duns and Bradstreet, that's another pass or fail. They either pass the financial stability or they don't. And there is no going back on that one, okay? The hub subcontracting plan, on the other hand, round one, you got to have it signed. So that's what they're looking for. Pass or fail is you have a hub plan, the hub plan is complete, and it's signed. Later on, they will determine if your hub plan passes or if it needs clarification. And that is a second piece of this. But for pass and fail, you need to have one and you need to sign it. That's what the vendors need to know. And the vendor performance score is something we look up just for guidance. We're not going to disqualify anybody if they have a low score, but we're going to take that into consideration if we have 500 responses. Okay, next slide. Here's one of the things that this is where the vendors get selected or not. They don't always understand this part, but I need you to understand how DIR competitively does our solicitation, because that's our number one benefit to you. We actually compete these solicitations. We don't just give them away. They're not applications. Nobody fills out an application to become a DIR cooperative contract vendor. This is not an approval list of vendors. We do not have that. So they have to respond to an RFO, and they have to qualify under the categories and the weighted evaluations. It is not a free give thing. So Exhibit B right now is their experience history. That's 80% of the whole score, okay? Exhibit C is the marketing plan and how they're going to support you as our customers. And that's worth 20% of the score. Under this solicitation, there is no price evaluation. There's no price. We are not going to look at that because, again, these are services. Prices are not determined until you have a scope of work that can be priced. There's too many pieces, too many configurations, too many requirements to take in consideration for pricing, okay? So with a show of hand, and whoever wants to speak, make sure that you raise your hand. What do you think about the percentage distribution here? Does anybody has any opinion or anything to say about it, or do you think it should be different? Go ahead, Michael.
It's been my experience that customer support is a higher priority than necessarily the experience, because a company could be around for a long time, but they have very poor support for their customer. So
So I think we could do a 70-30. What do you think?
Yeah, at least 30%.
Okay. Do you have a number in mind that you think would be appropriate that I can discuss with management?
Yeah, I think it's really maybe even closer to 40%.
Okay.
Because
Better
you can
at
go back and
40.
look at some, go back and look at some failed contracts that have happened
Mm-hmm.
across in state projects, and some of the really big name corporations out there have fantastic experience, but they just failed. And
On the support part.
right.
I'm definitely going to take that in consideration. We had the same situation with software because the customers do prefer good service, and we'll make sure that that's incorporated in the scope. And so is there anything else in this proposal that you guys feel can be different? Could we have addressed different things to evaluate besides experience, history, and support?
One of the things that it kind of goes maybe in customer support, but references prior experience from other clients.
Okay. References, we do get 3 for each vendor on different projects categories. And that is usually evaluated under the experience.
Okay.
References are evaluated with Exhibit B. So
Okay.
if a vendor provides reference for history and experience, and we take in consideration whatever the customer says, and that gets into the evaluation of Exhibit B. But if it is very, very important, we could discuss creating a reference score. The only problem with that, the vendors have found out that most customers won't give them references or submit their references on time, and they don't want to be penalized because people don't respond. So how do you guys have any idea how to solve that issue?
Well, one of the things we've done with a project before is just ask for a list of clients and to get a point of contact, and then we randomly we make the selection on who we contact.
Oh, I like that idea.
That
That's
way it's not filtered through the vendor necessarily. They're just kind of saying, here's 6 prior clients, here's their point of contact. They're willing to talk to you, and then we contact who we wish to contact.
that sounds awesome. And do you, when you ask for those contacts and list a client, do you talk anything about what categories they were working with? Like,
Right,
give
correct.
me
Yeah.
6 of development, 6 of this, or something like to that effect, something like that.
Something to that effect, whatever you're seeking services for.
Okay. Okay. Based on categories would work. Well, I'm going to take that into consideration as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next slide.
Oh, hold on. We have Gregory who would
Oh,
also like to speak.
absolutely, Gregory. Sorry, I didn't see a hand come up on my screen. That's why I didn't call you. All right, Gregory, what can you tell me?
So I work with custom software solutions and hardware solutions, and in the custom solutions arena, someone's experience says they can do work, but their customer support it will define whether or not the project's a success. So I would go just the opposite route, maybe 40% experience and 60% customer support, because it's an
Oh,
ongoing working relationship that will ensure whether or not the project succeeds. What they did last year with some other company will have no effect on whether or not this new project succeeds. So from that perspective, and the custom solutions arena, their customer support and will they help us address new issues that we didn't think to put in the SOW is a large concern.
participation of the vendors into being a partner for the project's success.
Yes. So experience is more like 40%, and their customer support record is probably 60%, telling you if this new project will succeed. For my
So you prefer the B be 40 and customer support be 60. Here's
yes.
an option that I've been thinking. What do you think about creating a form for customer support specific questions and having marketing plan as by itself a score. So we could divide the 100 into 3 pieces and make customer support planning 40% or whatever we decide that could be. Would that be something that you think would be a great idea?
I think it'd be a great idea and make them all 33%. Because there's going to be different solutions that this is more important. If you've got experience in some niche environment, that's going to be more important. I don't think there's a blanket percentage that's going to support all products appropriately. So give them all 33%.
That's true. That is true.
Hey, Vanya,
all right.
I have
yes,
a follow-up
Stephanie.
question on, I think it was Gregory that just spoke. This is Stephanie. I'm the director here. So I'm listening to you all and trying to solution. So some of the evaluation questions that we have, I think we could revamp to get a better understanding of what it is that you all need. So specifically, whenever if we can get some more details, and y'all can think about this and like email it in, you don't have to like speak it up, talk about it now unless y'all want to have a discussion about it. If we could get some more details specifically where the vendors fail on customer support, hopefully we can craft some actual evaluation questions to where they have to address that up front and tell us what their plan is. So specifically, like, are they like missing deadlines? Or are they not getting back to you all? Like, what are the specific areas where they're failing on? Because customer support's really broad. So if we can get a little bit more specifics from you all on what your experience has been that causes issues for you all, that would be helpful on our end for evaluation.
Sure, I can tell you in experience with custom solutions we've purchased, we get to the end of the contracting process, and then the vendor says, well, here's our support contract that we want added to the end of which changes all the things that we've already written in the SOW. And that tends to be accepted by our contracting processes, which means most of the requirements we've written for support and warranties and that kind of stuff are kind of thrown out the window at the end. And those things need to be upfront. And if the vendor is going to propose something different than what's in the SOW, that needs to be an early add to the negotiation before we start narrowing down which vendors we're choosing. I think it's just in the wrong place to make it successful.
So one of the things we could do is have legal determine some kind of a clause on our contracts that requires the vendors to provide all terms and conditions for their quotes at the time of negotiations.
Exactly.
That way, your contract team cannot make that decision if we can put it in writing.
Right.
I will talk to our legal about that.
We get responses, but they're vague responses. So they leave themselves open to make changes later. And it's impossible to ask precise questions if someone doesn't want to answer the question. So
that is
getting
true.
them to upfront provide any exceptions that they may wish to entertain throughout the contracting process, we need those upfront in the initial evaluation.
That's to protect customers from T's and C's at the end. All right. I will see how we can. That's a great idea.
We got a couple other hands up. Do you just want me to let them?
Go ahead. This is a interactive. So yes, I want to hear from them.
Yeah.
Hello, Alfred. You seem familiar.
Yeah, so this is Michael. I agree that having that service level agreement kind of spelled out at the outset is very important. So we, as the end users, business area, having access to the vendor to resolve issues that may pop up on a customized solution is very critical. Having that spelled out up front is very, very important.
Okay. So Michael, are y'all using a service level agreement in addition to the SOW? So you're using both?
Yeah, right. We are. We spell out the statement of work and then have a service level agreement as well.
Okay.
Kind
So
of, we have a matrix. We have a matrix as to criticality of an issue, and the vendor has to respond within a certain period of time.
and is this your service level agreement or the vendors?
It's ours. We crafted it, and they like
Okay.
basically that's what we put in as a requirement.
Okay. That helps.
Cool. That helps us understand what is it that we need. Alfred, what do you need to tell us?
Hey, Alfred,
Okay.
you're unmuted now. You should be able to speak if you want to.
Well, maybe he's having technical difficulty. Alfred, if later on you want to speak, please raise your hand again and we'll talk to you, okay? Next slide. So we talked a lot about customer services over here. So this section is perfect because I want to know what kind of services quality problems are we having. So let's talk about that. Next slide.
Hey, Vanya, Alfred put his question in the chat.
Oh, okay,
So
fantastic.
it
What is
says
it?
DIR used to have the service agreements or software support agreements that were on the site that showed what their agreements would become part of the contract. Can we do that again?
That is for software COTS contracts because those things don't change, and SaaS agreements, Alfred. But in the DBITS environment, we can request that the vendors provide a sample of their server level agreement and think about evaluating those. But I don't believe in the DBITS environment, we can actually review service level agreements because that is going to be based on the requirements of the SOW. Am I speaking out of term? Is that sounds about right for the other people in the call?
So DIR has a service level agreement template. It's a base template, but it's not going to capture everything. But we can kind of, I'm hearing what y'all are saying. It sounds like if we add some additional language to our service level agreement template, y'all can option to use it or not. But it at least kind of give you a little bit more, firmer starting point as to some of the language in that service level agreement if you want to adopt it over to your own. Is that what you're asking, Alfred? Okay. Yeah, we can look at.
Did he answer?
Yes, he said yes.
Oh, fantastic. We'll look into that to make sure we make part of the contract. Next slide. So here are the things that comes to mind when we're talking about development and services. So are the vendors assisting you guys with the scope of work, development for specific projects? Are they contributing the technology, the new technology, any changes? Are they contribute to assisting you to develop a scope of work that will be successful? Once you determine the vendors you're going to talk to and how you're going to do it, you probably have a high level idea of what your project is going to be, and you have kind of a simple starting point of a scope of work. But I expect our vendors to provide information and provide input to make a project successful. Do you all agree with that? You can tell me with a show of hands.
I just see one hand, Vanya.
Okay. Right now, turnaround times for vendors' response to request of information and quotes seems to be a big one in software. So I thought I'd throw it in here and see if that affects any of you. If you do, just let me know in the Q&A box or raise your hand that you want to talk about it. And do you all provide deadlines when you request quotes? Go ahead, Gregory.
So we basically get crunched for time. We need this SOW written, and we've had very little interaction with any of the vendors. So we're using the system to provide the rest of the information, and we're not Is that the wrong approach? Should we have demos and things already completed with some of these vendors? It's very difficult for me to use the website to find vendors that offer things because there's not enough detailed information for me to determine if what I want to actually offer. So
Gotcha. So in my world as a procurement person, before I work for DIR, what I like to do is write what I call a statement, very simple statement of what your end results is going to be, and then send it to some vendors and with the question, do you provide this type of work or not? And the second round, once you find out which ones do, then you start developing that scope of work more deep. You can ask for information. You can tell the vendors, do you have anything to contribute to this end result that I'm trying to do? Or you can actually have all the demos. If they say we have a software, or we have a program that does this, or we can do this, you can have them demo their current systems that they're going to use to help you. Or you can always interact with the customers at a different levels until you ask for a quote. Once you're ready to ask for a quote, then the scope of work should be written. During negotiations, once you select a vendor, you can have discussions. Is our scope of work clear? Is it going to accomplish what we want this to do? Because I always stick with what's the end result for what we're trying to do. And then the vendor at that time can contribute back and forth once you select that vendor to provide you information that will better improve your scope of work. That's how I used to do it. And then during negotiation, once we pick a vendor, we talk about terms and conditions, and we talk about service level agreements for the entire project. So those are some ideas that could work. I don't see anything that we could do in the solicitation itself to improve scope of work, but maybe we can create a category for writing scope of work assistance. Or do we already have that by any chance? Does anybody know? I think that would be a good new category for this DBITS. But I can go ahead and look into it, and then I'll let you guys know, okay? So the next question I'm asking is, what can DIR do to improve the SOW writing or vendor response and assistance? So one of the things I'm thinking is creating a category for SOW assistance and technical technology, knowledge, and depending on the field kind of thing. But do you guys have any other idea that DIR could do for you to make sure your scope of work is clear and concise and addresses what you're needing?
I think more examples of, SOW for software, SOW for custom cloud solutions, some more templates of what good contracting's, which ones have been effective and resulted well. Let us learn from all the agencies, not just within ourselves.
Okay. That's an initiative that I can work with my management to see how far down the line, or if there's room for DIR to take on something like that. My main question right now is how DIR would know of the projects. We do approve SOWs, so we can follow up with those. I'm just thinking out loud, but we'll put some work on that. Okay, next slide. So I also like to discuss lessons learned from past experience, and that's where you, the customer, can really help us. Because based on lessons learned, we can improve our terms and conditions. We can improve our how we help you guys. So lessons learned sometimes for me is, what is it that you think is missing from your past experiences with your own projects under the DBITS contracts? No one?
So terms and conditions, how do you handle purchase order T&Cs and conflicts? That is something we just don't know how to do. We end up with final signed contracts, and the final negotiations have changed things. and we don't know how to rework that, or so we can use
Okay.
help.
So conflicts of terms and conditions between all the three documents that compiles a project PO, right? So you got the T's and C's for the DIR contract you're using. You got the T's and C's from your purchase order, which usually if you're using a DIR contract should not be part of it. Under your order of precedence is where you can handle these T's and C's issues on your contract document. Order of precedence is very important because you can say the DIR T's and C's come first. If there's any conflict of interest, any conflict on those T's and C's, you fall back on your PO T's and C's. And if any conflicts happen with that, you fall off to the vendor. But first, you got to determine what all of those documents look like before you can do an order of precedence that will benefit you and address risk, which are the things you want to do with your terms and conditions. But I guess I can talk to DIR legal and see if there's anything we can do to help on that. As far as writing our solicitation to maybe we can put some requirements in there that the vendors need to review terms and conditions and give the customers all the conflict terms during their quote process. That could be something we could do, but let me think about that, how to address it at the DIR level. And solicitation. Sorry, I got to take notes. Solicitation requirements. So I'll put some thought to that. So anything else that besides terms and conditions that you guys want to tell me about it, can be improved? Anything with your projects that you have learned that could improve our solicitation requirements?
Is there any, I guess, legal advice for the writing of the SOW that y'all could offer, that, you know, for we have turnover just like everyone. So new people come in, being able to give them, you know, a lessons learned, and these are kind of the basic rules that we'll follow in this process, something we can hand off to new folks that we're initiating into this process. We're really
okay. So from a DIR point of view, we can include some kind of either training or a document or most frequent issues with T's and C's.
Yes, please.
That is definitely something we can think and discuss about it. From my point of view, lessons learned that I like to tell our customers by speaking to vendors, one of their main thing is they wanted the scope of work to be clear. They said most scope of work that they get to quote misses information or has contradictory information from one section to the other. And so in that case, we come right back around to assistant. You guys need assistance with SOWs or more training on writing SOWs. So, or we can create an SOW assistance category. So those are all options that we can discuss, and we'll keep you guys informed of how we're going to handle all of these issues in this next solicitation. Okay.
Hey,
So
Vanya,
go ahead.
sorry, there's a question in the Q&A.
Mhm.
It says, since DIR reviews and approves all DBITS SOWs, can DIR post a secure portal of all approved agency DBITS SOWs as a repository so other agencies can review and utilize prior approved SOWs as a template? That so that may have some legal repercussions. We would have to discuss with DIR leadership to make sure that we're not, you know, arbitrarily releasing proprietary information or anything like that, but we can definitely provide some examples. And Vanya just recently did an SOW training that we may, what I'm thinking, Vanya, is we can do a SOW training for the customers
Okay.
through DIR outside of DIR Discover. She has a fabulous SOW training that walks through more the generals of just how to complete a SOW and things that you need to look for. Something, and we can add that for you all to to participate in?
Yeah, we can do it and then post it to YouTube. So when you have turnovers and you have people that need to learn it, you can send them to the YouTube channel, DIR YouTube channel. And I can make this SOW training a little more detailed because I only had 30 minutes and SOW writing usually takes a little bit longer. But we can certainly discuss putting together a training. But I agree with Stephanie about posting other agencies approved SOWs can have some legal complications. But how about we talk to our legal and DR leadership and get back to you guys on that one, okay? Next slide.
Oh, there's a comment in the Q&A that says, similarly, CPA posts all RFPs or IFB solicitations on the ESBD, very beneficial for agencies. I also want to say they have something about writing SOWs. I'm just not certain where it is on CPA's website.
All right, I'll add that to my training for resources. The NIGP also posts, if you have an NIGP membership, or you can also go there for samples of SOWs, depending on what you're trying to do. But like I tell all my customers when I do training for scope of work or SOWs is the first and most important thing you, the customer, must know what your end result is. What do you want this to do? Once you know that, the other pieces of the planning process takes it into the process where it will be beneficial at the end because you will hit all the right places if you know exactly what your end result needs to be. And that's something we can talk about it later. Next slide.
We have one more question on SOW.
Yes.
It says SOW writing under waterfall methods is very expensive. Do you have a means for writing SOWs that follow agile processes with wording for ending projects prematurely if milestones are not met?
So there's two things there. One, yes, we can definitely work in writing better SOWs that will address some of the what I call risk and pitfalls of project management and work on adding some of the language from risk management that we did on the previous training, but work with you guys on penalties on your SOWs for missing deadlines is very important, especially when you have a long-term project. And the DIR contract terms and conditions allows you to cancel a contract at any time for convenience. And if you have reasons to cancel a PO or a project and start over, it's even better. But we in the kind of projects that we do with DBITS might not want to do that because you got a lot of resources that have already been spent and payments have been made for different sprints. So we just need to figure out a way around the issue and how to address it on your scope. And I'll put that on my notes and we'll address it. Next slide. So general information for customers now. Let's go. Next slide. So one of the things important for you is you always want to know what's being planned or what's being done for procurement in the cooperative program. If you go through this, our website, Selling Through DIR, next page, and schedule solicitation, you will know what we're planning, where it is. So if anybody asks, I strongly recommend any vendors that come to you that you send them to this site so that you don't compromise the procurement process. And vendors should not be talking to customers or DIR personnel if a solicitation is in the market. If we started with pre-solicitation notice, that's the point that people need to stop talking. So I want to make sure that you all know where to send vendors for information. And in each one of the solicitation schedule, there is a procurement lead contact information of who to talk to. So you can always tell your vendors, look, I can't talk about this. This is an open solicitation. Here's the contact for that solicitation. Here's the website where you can go find out where it is. So I really ask you to help us with this because things can get very ugly when vendors start talking, especially if you got an open project on a DBITS contract with a vendor and that vendor want to know what's going to happen once the contract expires with the new solicitation. don't answer those questions. Just have them send them to us. We want to provide you that service to deal with vendors. We don't want you to have to do that. If a solicitation is in the DIR box, we like to take care of questions. Okay, next slide. So YouTube, you guys know that YouTube have training for customers as well as vendors. And whenever there is a new YouTube, DIR always puts it out on our website. So just be aware of what the DIR website contains. Please communicate any issues that you might have with us. If you can't find something easy or if something takes too many steps or whatever, our outreach group is very good at what they do, and they would love to hear from you if something needs to be improved on our communications with customers. Okay, this is just a FYI, just in case you didn't know. Okay, next slide. So now this is an open forum. If I did not address any of the issues that you feel needs to be addressed through the new solicitation requirements and scope, this is the time to tell me. I tried to hit all the high notes from experience, but I know that there's got to be other stuff that I missed that you can tell me. So now the forum is yours, please.
Is there any SOW legal review done by DIR, or is that something we should have done internally before submitting an SOW?
Well, that one is a good question because there is a SOW requirement process that the legislator says DIR has to approve certain SOWs at certain thresholds. I'm not sure if that review includes T's and C's, but that's something to ask. So I am going to get an answer for you. Okay.
Thank you.
So when I post the questions and answers from this webinar, then I will have an answer for you on that. Anybody else? You're welcome to just write your questions on the Q&A because I'm going to print them and answer them all for you and send it to you via email if you're on this call. Okay. Next slide. So we've been sharing our thoughts throughout this time that we spent together. We have 7 or 8 minutes to answer questions. But I think we've been answering them as you go. Patricia, is there any questions that we need to review now before we go? Or I think we answered them all.
In the Q&A box.
Hmm?
There's nothing in there.
Cool. So I think we addressed stuff. So next slide. So here's what happens next, right? DIR is going to release this RFO. First, we're going to do a lot of writing. Early December. So anybody asks you, when is the new DBITS solicitation going to be out? Tell them early December. When would a conference be? We have a RFO solicitation conference within 2 weeks after we post. The vendors, you should always tell them to go to the ESBD and check that out. The posting time is about 8 weeks. So DIR have considered in our planning of timeline. And our first contract under the old DBITS will expire December 2025. There are a total of 33 current contracts out of 95 that expires in 2025. So as you can see, the numbers are going to be big, but DIR is committed to make sure customers are taken care of. And one other thing that customers need to know is about the survivability clause on all of these contracts, which is very important for you if you have a project that is ongoing, that hasn't ended yet when the contract ends. Who was talking? Go ahead.
We have something in the Q&A. It says, when does DIR anticipate the new award of 593, and will there be a transition period for in-flight procurements under existing 553?
Yes, we are going to make sure, it's our goal, but you know, Murphy laws, if it can't go wrong, it's going to go wrong. I like to avoid Murphy's Law. So I plan to award these contracts before the current contracts expire. That is my goal. Hopefully by November of 2025, we'll be pretty far along. But again, these predictions of timelines are totally dependent on the number of responses. Because if we have 400 responses to this solicitation, just evaluating administrative review alone could take 60 days for that many vendors. And evaluations alone could take 3 to 4 months. So I am hoping with all my heart that we're going to make this progressive, because this is a service contract. So negotiations are basically not as intense as a software is, because there's too many ifs and too many brands. So this is just a service one. So there's going to be some issues, but like, again, my plans, and I like to meet deadlines. I like to get at least most of the current contracts awarded. Once a contract is awarded, if it's one that you are using, there is a transition space where you just do a purchase order, change order to put the new contract number in place, or you can use the survivability clause if the vendor you're using did not get a new contract, which is possible since this is a competitive solicitation, okay? But in all cases, there are a very detailed transition plan with the contract management group. And if you need procurement group, our group will help as well. We try to help as much as we can with that. Keeping our customers, we need to make sure you guys have what you need. And if you have projects that are in a way and you need assistance figuring out how to continue and complete a project, we will definitely help you with that. Okay. Next.
There's no other questions.
Cool. Next slide. I think we did all the questions already. So I want to thank everyone for your comments, for your help, and really for being in this call, because whenever DIR does surveys, which I went away from that, we don't get a lot of responses. And I find that through the success of the software solicitation, talking to my customers and getting their input makes it for a successful solicitation. And customers are happy with the new software. So I wanted to apply that same philosophy with DBITS, mainly because I also need to learn from you guys. And I am so thankful that you are on this call, and DIR appreciates you very, very much. I want you to know that. And thank you. Thank you so much for everything. Next slide. So here's my contact information, and Julia is my Robin to my Batman. She and I are together doing the solicitation. So if you can't reach me, you can reach her. And we are going to make all of our efforts to make this solicitation very easy and to address all your needs. Okay. Next slide. So I want to thank you guys again for being here. And we got 1 minute to spare. If anybody has anything they want to say before we close.
I will encourage everyone to, if you think of something later, don't think that that was your last shot. Please send it in to Vanya, and she'll take it into consideration. So please don't think this is your only shot to give input. We're taking input. As you heard, the solicitation will not be posted for about a month. So we have time to consider input. So if you've gone back to your team members and they have suggestions, please forward that over to Vanya. It really helps us to help build a better evaluation and solicitation, because you all are the end users and we want to make sure that you have what you need.
Yes, Ron, the slide deck will be sent to the attendees.
Yes. The Q&A might take a little longer, but I'll have, as soon as this is posted to the YouTube, Patricia will send you the slide deck and the link to the YouTube if your team members want to listen to our discussions and provide additional input that you can send to me via email. Truly, truly appreciate it. All right. Thank you, guys. This is it.